So I think it was Molly Hemingway, who of the Federalist, who first pointed out that there's a cycle that the press goes through in their Trump hatred. That they go into Russian collusion. Oh, and where are the Russians? And here was Boris Badenov, and there was Natasha, and Paul Manafort, and all these things. They had the Russian collusion, and then that blows up because it's all nonsense. It's all completely ridiculous. And when that's exposed, they go into racism. Oh, the racism. It was Donald Trump. This shooter in New Zealand referenced Donald Trump. The image of him that we created that inspired him, but it's somehow Trump's fault. And Trump says some of the same words. He speaks English, and they speak English. It's incredible. And the connections are just endless. Who could say, he walks upright, and so do they. And then that falls apart and people start to kind of roll their eyes. And when all of that won't wash, they go back to the routine that he's crazy. Is Donald Trump crazy? And so that's the thing. Over the weekend, Donald Trump went back to his tweeting. He sent out a tweet storm. And you've heard me say before that I thought, and still think, that he pulled back after the midterms, thinking that he would just let the Democrats be crazy. He would just let them be nuts, and sort of pull back a little bit because the midterm results sort of showed that people were turned off by him, especially people in the suburbs, especially women. And so I think he kind of took a little bit of a back seat. Now he's coming back. What I suspect, because I suspect so much of this is strategic with Trump. It's not a question of playing 3D chess or anything like that. It's just a question of political instinct. And I think he does a lot of this stuff on instinct. He feels that, okay, the Democrat lineup is now a mosh pit. It's these people eating each other they have to apologize for every word that comes out of their mouth. I mean, Beto is going to spend his entire campaign saying, "Oh, I'm sorry I said that. Oh, and I'm sorry I said that. And I'm sorry that I've said." That's what it's going to, and that just makes Trump look great because he never apologizes. So I think that Trump basically decided time to get back in the game. It's time to get back in the game. So he sent out a bunch of tweets about a bunch of subjects, and the press reverted to their old idea that somehow this guy is crazy. So here's an MSNBC panel discussing this.
Crazy times demand a crazy president. I mean, if this isn't nuts, and I'm not a clinical expert, but if you were to go back in time and on one day switch to this kind of presidential behavior in normal history, people would instantly think he's lost his grip. There are these spasms he has where he starts tweeting all this crazy stuff. I'm not sure what the cause is, but we become so dulled to Trump's madness. I don't know what it'll take. Does he have to go run around with an aluminum foil hat? He is clearly under some psychological duress here, and it I think, is a crisis-level event.
I mean, it's like they're on a treadmill. They just keep coming back. It's like one of those trains that keeps going past the same station over and over again. Bill Kristol, the absolute never Trumper. Oh, how wise he is. So much wiser than those silly little Republicans who voted for Donald Trump. He says now, because of these tweets, all is justified at last.
I've got to say, this weekend, people who haven't agreed with me, people who have said to me over and over, "Oh, come on, Bill, the tweets are annoying and vulgar and even a little bit, disagreeable, let's say, for a president. But, the tax cuts are good and the judges are good." I say this weekend, a few people said, maybe this really shows that he's not, stable. He doesn't have the psychological state to be trusted as president, and especially for an additional 4 years.
Bill Kristol was good when Harry Met Sally, but since then I think he's gone downhill. Let's take a look at what Trump tweeted. Let's see. Is he crazy? He tweeted about Christopher Steele. He says, Trump, this is the tweet, report. Christopher Steele backed up his Democrat and crooked Hillary paid for fake and unverified dossier with information he got from send-in watchers of low-rating CNN. This is the info that got us the witch hunt. This is true. Christopher Steele, in a piece of his testimony that was released, admitted that he relied on unverified reports from CNN websites, people who would just send in their comments, basically. CNN has an iReport website, and these things are basically just randos sending stuff in. CNN calls them, it's citizen journalism. Christopher Steele relied on citizen journalism. He relied on the comments section at CNN. That's essentially what it is. And this was what the FBI used to get their FISA warrant to spy on the Trump campaign. Now, I mean, just for a minute, clear the clouds away, the MSM clouds away, and think about this for a minute. This is the information, comments from CNN. And you know what the comment section is like a lot of times on these sites. Comment section from CNN was used by the FBI to get permission to spy on opposition political campaign, opposition to the administration in power. If these guys were journalists, if there were such things as journalists, they would be more shocked than Trump. Trump wouldn't have to be tweeting it out. Here's another one, another tweet. What the Democrats have done in trying to steal a presidential election, first at the ballot box and then after that failed with the insurance policy, is the biggest scandal in the history of our country. Biggest scandal in the history of the country, typical Trump overspeak, but it is a huge scandal. And now there's more testimony coming out. The testimony from Strzok, remember Strzok and Page, Peter Strzok, the former FBI agent who was having the affair with Lisa Page and was texting her about it. And he texted to her that there's got to be an insurance policy, and it's very unclear. He says, I want to believe the path you threw out, Lisa Page threw out, for consideration in Andy's office, Andy McCabe, that there's no way Trump gets elected, but I'm afraid we can't take that risk. It's like an insurance policy in the unlikely event you die before you're 40. So last Thursday, Doug Collins, who's the ranking Republican on the House Judiciary Committee, he released transcripts of Strzok's testimony to that. And when he was questioned on the meaning of this insurance policy text, Strzok said, quote, we had received information from a very sensitive source alleging collusion between the government of Russia and members of the Trump campaign. Here is Collins, who released the testimony, talking about Strzok. This is cut 9.
Peter Strzok was a man who thought he was untouchable. He became a hero in his mind's eye, and thinking that he was going to be able to control, and sometimes maybe showing off for his mistress at the time, Lisa Page, let's never forget that, but also in his own role to grow up in the department. Peter Strzok was central going back to the email investigation, into the Russia investigation, into what became the Mueller investigation. So what we're seeing here is, yes, we see the bias. The transcripts reveal the bias. And when we see that Mr. Mueller actually got rid of him based on, his actions and those texts. So I think when we look at this together, we get a picture of someone who was brought up or allowed to grow, if you would, under the Department of Justice under President Obama, in which politics became the foremost word, not justice.
I know the scandal gets so complex, and I don't want to get into the high weeds about it, but it's really interesting. I mean, to me, if I'm a reporter and I'm looking at this stuff, what I think is, Strzok said we received information from a very sensitive source. So this is sent, I think, about 2 weeks after the investigation into the Trump campaign is open. Who's the sensitive source? They said they didn't have spies in the Trump campaign. Who's the sensitive source? It's not going to be the Australian ambassador who they keep saying was the guy who helped start this investigation off. I mean, they may have had a spy in the Trump campaign. That would be what I would do if I were a reporter, because that's a big story. It's not a big story that Trump is tweeting about it. He wouldn't have to tweet about it if people were covering it. What Trump understands is that social media is the new journalism, because it is the new source of information, because the journos are not doing their job right now. And people are catching on to this. There's a new poll. Half of Americans believe that President Trump is right, that the Mueller's Russian investigation is a witch hunt. And they say that 50% of those questioned agree that the probe is a politically motivated witch hunt. 47% disagree. 3% aren't sure. And 62% do not want impeachment to go forward, while 28% say they do. 10% are undecided, and Trump was very happy, obviously, about those results. But let's just have in our imagination for a minute. Let's just imagine a world in which the mainstream media, as one, is trying to destroy this president and his presidency. Why shouldn't Trump be tweeting? What's crazy about that? Ted Koppel, you may remember Ted Koppel. He was basically one of the dean of journalists in the last generation, had a very, I can't remember the name of it, Nightline, I think it was, had a very influential show on ABC. This is Ted Koppel, who's no Trump fan. You can hear it. He doesn't like Trump. This is him talking about how the press is treating Trump and whether Trump, what it means when Trump says that they're after him.
His perception that the establishment press is out to get him doesn't mean that great journalism is not being done. It is. But the notion that most of us look upon Donald Trump as being an absolute fiasco, he's not mistaken in that perception, and he's not mistaken when so many of the liberal media, for example, describe themselves as belonging to the resistance. What does that mean? That's not said by people who consider themselves reporters, objective reporters of facts. That's the kind of language that's used by people who genuinely believe, and I rather suspect with some justification, that Donald Trump is bad for the United States, and the better, the sooner he's out of office, the better they will like him.
So Ted Koppel, a respected and respectable journalist, agrees with Trump about this. Doesn't like Trump. You could hear him say it. He doesn't like Trump, but he agrees that Trump is right. So if Trump is tweeting about things, it's because he knows he is the only voice that can stand up to that voice of ABC, NBC, CBS, New York Times, Washington Post. And they are so used to trashing Republicans and conservatives, so used to doing it without getting kicked back, that they are shocked. They think it's madness. I don't think that's insane. I don't think there's any damn thing insane about it. I think it is exactly what Republican presidents should do. They should all do it. They never do. What they do is they keep their mouths shut. They keep their heads down. They look at their shoes and they walk quietly by while they're called racist, and they apologize and they say, oh, well, I misspoke and I didn't mean to say it and it's not what I meant. And Trump doesn't do any of that, and it drives them crazy because that's where their power lies. And again, I have complaints about Trump. I criticize him. It's not about that. On this, he's 100% right, and there's absolutely nothing crazy, nothing wrong whatsoever about going to Twitter and going to social media to counter the narrative that is just raining down upon him.